experience. Please welcome Dr. Momoko Kitara to the podium. Thank you. Okay, are we having a seated discussion? Okay, that's alignment over there. Sure, by all means. Thank you.
Hello. Can you hear me? Okay, thank you. Since I already talked, so I just try to save time for the other distinguished panelists. But thank you very much. Actually, you know, the bra issue is just reminded of me something that because I have these conversations. It was actually originally from my country, Japan's context, but I heard also the girls actually talking that you know, they are really make hard to try to hide those bra strips to be inside. And if it is somehow, you know, you have a bit thin shirt and it's visible, then it's their problem. So why not they are hiding, or why they are kind of, how can I say, attracting the men's attention with that? And I was really find it difficult, like, but this is how it is, that how the women's, it's kind of imposed that we are also responsible for how to hide our bodies, and so that's a quite an interesting one that I actually remember that. But yes, I also, since I started working at the World Maritime University, I was also went for lecturing, etc. Then I didn't remember that I met this girl, and she was wondering whether she will actually become a seafarer or not after the education. And then she said that I encouraged her to go to sea. And after some years, she contacted me and she talked about this gender-based violence at sea. And she was with other crew, other nationalities on board, and I just couldn't really say anything. It's a very ashamed, but I find it's quite difficult that I encouraged someone and then she took the decisions. Of course, that's her decision, it's not my decision, but it really, that's the case. And it's really hard that, it's so sad to see that this young lady, and this is not probably the only story, of course, there's many such stories. When it comes to my career, I actually gave up becoming, taking a maritime career because of my age and because of my gender. Because when I finished my career, the education, I was already 33. And in the context of Japan, that's the age that I should get married and have children. And I was told already during the MET education that why are you here? You should marry and raise children. That's the women's happiness by one of the captains. So yes, I know that this is a challenge. It's really hard. That's a kind of reality. And I knew that if I start from the bottom, you know, like the lowest rank, what's going to happen? So I finished my education and got my COC license, but I decided, or probably even no opportunities, but I decided to take the other ways to become a teacher and researcher. Yes, so yeah, but I think I'm also interested in the others' stories, so I'll just stop here, and thank you very much again for inviting me today.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kitara. I can quite relate to your story when it comes to you know, childbearing pressures and all of that. I feel like a lot of the times that I do not, please don't get me wrong, I am quite happy and fulfilled as a mom of two. I've got two little girls. But when I suddenly found myself pregnant, it felt like the sea was literally spitting me out. The sea that I had embraced and loved so much with everything I ever could muster within me. here it was, and it was spitting me out. I did not want to leave the sea, but I had to make the choices. And these are the things that are real to us as women. Having to choose. You have to choose. You can't have both. It's either this or that, or nothing at all. You know, and it isn't fair. And you watch your counterparts thriving, the male ones I'm talking about, they're thriving, and you feel like, you know, you could have been so far if you were supported that way as a woman. And I spent a year at home with no means of income. You know, the company that I worked for were surprised, as I was, to find that I am pregnant and I am at sea, and they do not have a maternity policy that covered me. And we had the back and forth. At the end of the day, they hold the purse, so they were not going to pay me no matter how much kicking and screaming I did. And so I had to now look out for, you know, for my support from other places. And so if we can encourage our ship operators, ship owners, manning companies to take this into consideration, to make this career so attractive, because oh my goodness, despite all the challenges that I've gone through, this is an incredibly fulfilling career. It's beautiful, you grow, you learn so much about yourself, you discover the world. I was curious about wanting to know where does the sun go until I was in the Antarctic at 12 o'clock at midnight, knowing that we are more or less on the same time zone and the people at home are fast asleep. So the sun just goes and chill out in the Antarctic and come back in the morning, you know. But you know what, it's incredible. And so we need to look into our policies. Nothing is going to happen unless, from a regulation perspective, we do something about it. So, without wasting any time, Captain Antoinette Keller, please take the stage.
I'm not going to take the stage. I've been in the industry now this year, celebrating 30 years in the maritime industry. And I think it's, thank you. And I think it is the second time in my whole career that I'm sitting in front of people. And this is the very, very first time that I'm talking about a topic that I should have started talking about 30 years ago. So with that, I would like to, because I thought there was a presentation, so I prepared a presentation. I want to share some quotes that made a personal impact for myself. Equality will always feel uncomfortable for those who once benefited from inequality. It's not consent if you make me feel afraid to say no. And I think that quote has a big impact for me, because we say, where do we start to deal with this topic? I think we should start at home. And we should start our youngsters to say, let's talk about consent. Another quote, raise your words, not your voice. It is rain that grows flowers, not thunder. If you want to put me in a flat spin, shout at me. I can't stand that. It is emotionally draining. Rape is about violence, it's not sex. If a person hits you with a spade, you wouldn't call it gardening. And and I must admit, this journey is with the support of a lot of males and fellow seafarers and leaders that also wanted to see me succeed. But there was those that unfortunately wanted to set me up to fail. So the last one, I have a lot of respect for this gent that said this, and I unfortunately don't know who that is. I got called gay because I let a drunk girl sleep in my bed and I didn't touch her. I guess it's better than being called a rapist. So just also something that was drawn attention with the Deputy Minister already mentioning is the midshipman sexual assault, so we won't carry on with that. And then Just two more things that obviously we know about, that our own government continues to intensify its fight against gender-based violence and femicide, with President Cyril Ramaphosa as described as the country's second pandemic. And one of the speakers called it a global pandemic. And then also just something that is happening at home, but you don't see it often, you should see it often. It's one of a very simple thing, but it's so inexcusable. A Mississippi lawmaker accused of punching the wife in face for not undressing quickly enough. So with this, I also had a picture that I wanted to share, and now everybody will see it. It's the same jumper. It's the same jumper that's being advertised, but they're advertising the same sweater. So why are they different? His clothing is an accessory while she is the accessory. So are we part of the problem? By accepting these differences, we perpetuate the objectification of women's bodies. So now it becomes very personal. So I was born to a teenage mother, only 15 years old. I endured sexual and physical abuse from a very, very early age myself, well into my teenage years. No one looked after that, no one stopped it, and yet everybody knew. I joined my first vessel at the age of 19 on 1st August 1992 because I was running away from the problem. If we are not willing to talk about our own experiences, we will never be able to address the problem. So this is a very difficult topic for me, but it's very personal and it's very real. My experience at sea, so some of the speaker says in 2008, I was 1992 till 2005 at sea. You can see I'm still shaking because I don't like public speaking. I had, when I joined my vessel, just to also put food on the table and look after the family, because it's humble beginnings. The first comment I got was, what am I trying to prove? What are you doing here? A chief officer instructed me to iron his uniform shirts because he didn't know what to do with me as a cadet. I was given a lot of cleaning jobs because maybe that's the better job for the woman to do. I was given to work separately from others while others were working together as a team. I was put separately in the forecastle greasing turnbuckles. I was also placed by a master and say, you will definitely put this cadet in the corner. I guess you didn't put this baby in the corner for too long. Inappropriate pictures are still very real, posted in public spaces on board without consideration for wives and female seafarers. Inappropriate locker room talk during meal times as jokes, or tea breaks to test my resolve, or is it just ignorance? Enduring inappropriate remarks about my breasts and other body parts. I think that was mentioned enough today. And I also definitely, someone mentioned earlier on about the boiler suits and it having holes, and you've got to make a plan. So you do wear a t-shirt underneath, and then it's extra hot and it's extra clammy. A stevedore once placed both his hands on my breast to check if I was a woman, because he never saw a female seafarer before. Vegetables were carved into male genitals and offered to me for lunch. I once went to the bathroom in the middle of the night and I saw an attempt being made to gain access to my cabin, and I prayed and was so thankful that my cabin was always locked. I wore a uniform skirt because there was no uniform developed for females back then. So I brought that tradition in, and I thought, why should I hide who I am and what I am? And an engineer thought it was appropriate to run his fingers from my ankles to my knees during a dinner function. Senior officers were running around naked, exposing themselves, and asked me if I liked what I saw. And I love this photo where a lot of the females are here, and I'm sad it's not on a presentation. It's the SA Gullis all trip, female trip. And I meet this with a lot of, I don't know, conflict, because I was asked to be part of that trip and I refused to because I didn't want to be put in a box. I'm a seafarer, not because I'm a female. I'm a seafarer because I succeeded to be one. Female seafarers are an important part of the maritime sector at sea and ashore. But like already was mentioned, that by the time we get to the height of our careers, we are expected to come home and be mothers. But there's positives as well. I learned a lot about myself and others. And boy, oh boy, I made mistakes, because I've also had chats with ladies in this room that says, you were a hard one.
Definitely.
Pushing boundaries, what they can do, I can do better. Also received protection and support from those wanting to see me succeed. I then became the first woman in South Africa in 2001 to obtain a Master's Certificate of Competency. And I helped to open the door for other women to follow. I became the first female principal officer at SAMSA, a position I still hold today. I'm very proud of. And that is my boss, just having to say something. And winning the SAMSA CEO Excellence Award in 2020 was a highlight of my life. And last but not least, meeting my wonderful husband in the room with me today. He never expected me to remove the jewels from my crown. He knew and understood before I did that I do not need a smaller crown. He was the man with bigger hands to help me carry my crown. So to conclude, we must all be part of the solution. We cannot remain quiet, break the silence, create a safe, inclusive working environment, have proper policy legislation in place to effect change. Personally, and this is very personal for me, I need to continue to be a mother and spokesperson for our transgender son, to be available as a mentor in the industry and continue to promote women at sea and in the maritime sector ashore. I'm here to mentor. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your words. As I mentioned earlier, that a lot of what is being shared, one way or another, I would have lived it, I would have shared across this panel here, we would have shared the similar kind of experiences. One of my first daughter, she doesn't mince her words, she wants to be a captain of a ship. And I look at our industry and the way it looks right now, and I'm wondering if I should be encouraging my baby girl to venture into this environment the way it is. I stand here because I feel that I have a responsibility to shape and pave and clean out and make it nicer, so that she wouldn't have to put up with any of the things that I've had to put up, or any other girl that is experiencing similar kind of problems currently out at sea. That it stops. And these conversations are very important. And without wasting any time, I would like to welcome Miss Captain.
Yes, Mrs. Yes.
Captain Tempela Tabushi. I think I can't wait to hear what Tempela has to say. She's got a lot to say. We used to call her Bubbles. Because, well, Bubbles. Take it away, Tempela.
I actually don't need a mic, so with the Thank you, T. Okay. Hi everyone. Okay, so really as it have been introduced, my name is Tende Latifoch. So I come from a small town called Bramstown. Apparently they call it Makanda. I'm still stuck in old ways. I still call it Bramstown. So Bramstown is a landlocked city, and I think much of my upbringing was a bit of a shock for people to find me here, because there's like a dam behind the guys, there's no river, there's no sea, so, oh Lord. You have to school me here. All right, so I think it's amazing how we get anxious when we have to actually address people. We're the very same people that actually call people up and start doing drills. So it's a bit of a shocker. Like you have to tell people, walk to the storm inside, go straight there and do this, don't die. But when you come to a space like this, there's a bit of a fear that you're going to be subjected to a lot of there's a lot of people obviously thinking, okay, there's some people here that think, okay, you think you're smart, or people here will say, oh, you think you've been through it all, whatever the case may be. So for me, unlike Antoinette, whom I come after in the company as well, because I work for South Marine, so rightfully I speak after her, don't mind. I stand on the shoulders of giants. So unlike Antoinette, I didn't prepare a speech because I was told it was going to be an open conversation, which obviously that's one way of getting me to come here. So always an open conversation and it becomes one where we have to actually address. So I think my story was a bit, I think for me everyone can kind of see that I'm a bit extroverted. I'm an introvert weirdly enough, but I'm a bit extroverted. So a lot of people have this misconception that gender-based violence, in particular sexual harassment and sexual offences, actually happen to people that are timid, which is wrong. Because here I am, I've also had experiences on board. So I think we need to dispel those beliefs to say, okay, fine, oh, that person will never go through that. Because we actually experience people differently. A friend to you could actually be a perpetrator to me. So for me, we've gotten in these conversations so many times, and some people would be like, oh my goodness, Mama did that to you? So it gets a bit confusing for people to open up about what has happened. And it also gets a bit confusing for people to report things to the authority, because the authority is full of the people that are coming from the seaside. So now you worry that if I report to Lulama knows this person, they're besties, she might just go straight and tell him. Or if I report to a company, there's an issue with regards to the companies, they're going to obviously be more concerned around their, their image. So now there's going to be a lot of damage control. So for me, I almost don't want to talk about my issues or what I've observed, because I think it's a bit outdated. So I know right now there's a lot that has gone into the softer skills of training people on board ships, and something that wasn't there back then. So back then it was very much, it was subjected to where you were coming from, who you were, your family, what you know. It wasn't really something that was instilled in the people in management or even people in the lower ranks. So I've kept a few people in the boards. I've also actually had a couple of times, I've had to smack a few. Yeah, a bit of a tomboy, guys. So I had to smack a few, but then when the captain, when the people asked what had happened to so-and-so, why is he crying? And I'd be like, I don't know, ask him. Meanwhile, this person had tried to smack my backside. And then they'd be like, what happened to you? And he's like, no, I hit my small toe. And the captain was like, oh, okay. And then he walks past and he's like, so for me, I almost, when we have these conversations, I also want to recognize the people that we have sailed with, the men that we've sailed with, and I'm a firm believer in using the available platform to actually get the message across, because a lot of the times the people that actually helped me were actually men. So as a minority, you need to tag onto someone as a lifeline and find a person who actually understands you, and a person who understands the problem and is willing to be part of the solution, and latch onto that person, irrespective of gender. So for me, I've had many instances, man. Like I had a captain punching a person in the face because I told them what he had said. And I think the company I worked for was very protective over me. I was like the cute little baby. Because I started working when I was 17. I joined my friendship when I was 17. And I was coming from a background where I'm a last born, I believe. And I'm also coming from an all-girls school. So I'm coming through and I'm just this person. If you went to an all-girls school, you'll find that when you're dressed website, you don't mind. Because it's just like a bunch of girls, it's nothing weird. But you get so comfortable in your skin that anything and everything that happens around you does not feel like an attack on you. So you don't personalize any experience. So for me, I found that when I got to see a lot of people leveraged off that confidence that I'd gotten from a young age, and they kind of saw me as, I know she's one of us. So I was one of them, because I made a lot of friends who were gents at sea. And funny enough, my friends were on the other side of the curve because they had stories that were very much sexual, that they obviously shared with me, and not just be like the 17-year-old with eyes popping. And I found it interesting. But I think one of the biggest things that I find with this industry, or maybe at large, humans at large, is the idea around consent. People tend to misunderstand the difference between, like Antoinette saying, rape and sex. And I think in an environment like being on board, there was a lot of porn watched. Everyone. It was literally like schooling you. I had never watched porn until I got on a ship, where I was actually schooled by one of my friends. I was like, come watch it, let's sit together. But like I said, I was very curious. I was like, okay, fine, let's watch. I'm like, oh Lord, what are you doing now? So I think for me it wasn't that, because at the back of my head, I have this belief that women's bodies are not to be sexualized. I have this belief that no one's body is supposed to be sexualized. If you can call an ankle, you can definitely call a genital area by its name. And people around you know me a lot. I use the V word a lot. And it's not because I'm trying to be crude, but it's just to make people, desensitize people from having to feel that this part of the body is only for pleasure. And the pleasure is one-sided. Because now if people watch porn and they have this misconception that, oh, I want to do that. And then when they do it with people, they do it with people who aren't consenting. You do it with a person who's drunk, maybe. In my case, it happened because I was high on, what do you call this thing? Codeine. So I was very sick. I had flu, like very bad flu. And I had this guy, Lord, apparently he's passed. Rest in peace, I believe. I don't know. That used to happen last week. But anyway, this gent, which of course I have forgiven without an actual apology. So this gent had this crush on me, and people who know me know I do not like people that like me for no reason. It's like, why do you like me? If you can't tell me why, then obviously you're off the roster. So it's a pity because I had a lot of people his age. He was more like a senior in age. So everyone else said he was a sweetheart. And everyone was just, oh my gosh, he's so sweet. He's so sweet. And I'm like, no, he's creepy. And everyone's like, no, he's not creepy. He cares. He's always buying you chocolate. I'm like, I like chocolate, but he's creepy. So it got to a point where one day where I was very sick. So now we had a fourth mate on board. I was third mate. And we were all a bunch of friends, fourth mate, second mate, chief mate, captain. We all buddy. We were very open with each other. So when it happened, the second mate had given me flu, like what do you call this, Benadryl for flu, which has codeine. It took me many years not to drink that, but then recently I started drinking it, got over the trauma. So when he gave it to me, this gent comes on the bridge and he's like, oh my goodness, have you seen bubbles? And then he thought, because we had been talking, he thought, okay, we're friends, because he's friends with everyone else and he's around with everyone else. So he's like, no, I just put her to bed. I told her she mustn't come to watch tonight, and I told her not to lock her door because if she dies in there, we're not going to have any spares. This is a very old ship. There was not a chance you could actually lock yourself in and have a way for people to come in because it was very old. No one had keys. So you have the latch from the inside, and that was just about it. So now this gent now decides, okay, he's going to test waters. So now I wake up the following day. I can tell you a lot about me, but anyway, I'll try and undershare that I was probably not dressed. So this gent comes in the morning, and then I'm coming on watch and I'm feeling refreshed, and everyone is talking, oh, how are you feeling? Oh my goodness, the ship is so quiet without you. No, I'm not feeling bad. I think that Benadryl works. And then this creep comes through, and he's like, oh, last night was great. I was like, last night what? But you must understand, this person is not even my type. Not even, by a long shot. So obviously, number one, it's like, firstly, I'm like, okay, number one, what the hell? And then I think at the time I was actually a virgin, Lord bless my soul. So, so this guy says last night was great. I'm like, what about last night happened? And then he's like, no, okay, anyway, never mind. So I'm not sure what to check because I'm just like, oh Lord, where do I check? What do I do? The doctor's on board, and the second mate was obviously not specializing in any gynecology, so we're not going to be able to spot anything that happens. And he's busy asking me, did you feel anything? What happened? But we didn't know who to talk to. And the captain himself was another creep. Because now he was just one of those people that you talk to, and then he was constantly on some, don't wear your vest, you're going to be, you're going to be making the men uncomfortable. And I always told them, why are the men's emotions more important than mine? I'll wear a vest and carry on. And it was a bit hot right in the UAE, so it was very hot, so there was no chance of actually always being in a scarf or whatever. So anyway, back to the story, and then we didn't tell the captain, because now people are like, this guy's such a nice guy, it's not that good. And then it comes to like 2 days later and he says, I was joking.
Oh.
So I'm like, okay, did it happen, did it not happen? So for me, it's not actually the act itself, but it's like the violation. Like, I do know I do not sleep with clothes on. I do know that I didn't lock my door. I know I was high, and I can't remember much of anything that happened. But in my memory, I can actually remember seeing him. Not sure location-wise, whether it was next to me or whatever. So it got to a point where I went home. I think by the time I got home, it was 45 kgs. I went from like 50 to 45. And I looked very sickly, but I couldn't really, as a person that I am, as open as I am, I couldn't really tell my mom, because my mom was just going to be like, you're not going back there. And I told my sister, and then she was like, what do we do with this? And then I told the fourth mate, and the fourth mate is like, I'm going to go punch him in the face. And the captain, you just knew, no matter how much you spoke to him, he was not going to understand. Because now I was a very same person who was wearing vests and crop tops, so obviously he's going to be on stand, you call for a type of mentality. So eventually that captain signed off, and then another one joined. And the minute that one came, it was the floodgates were open. I went to him and I wept. And I'm not really much of a cry, especially around people. So I went to him and I didn't even know him from a bar of soap, but he looked so comforting. No, he wasn't chubby. He looked very comforting. And when I told him my story and the guy was still on board, he was like, I'll attend to this. And thankfully he was an ex-boxer. The rest was history. But then there was I didn't report it, because there were no lines of reporting. I don't know if it went further from the captain to anyone else, because there was no way of checking. I couldn't report it to an SAPS because now I don't know if it happened or not. So for me, it's not always the act itself, which is why I support this gender-based violence at sea conversation, because it's not the actual act itself that's a problem. It's a lot that goes, how you making me feel, the perceptions around that. They will always say, no, there's a difference between how you respond to a person you actually like and a person you don't. But there's a lot of perception. It's a perceptual thing. To say a person has raped you, it's you. You can't tell me a person didn't rape you just because you feel, oh no, that wasn't rape. So the conversation for me going forward is, how do we actually bridge the gap from land to sea and make it easy for people to report? And also make it easy for people to report post, because this happened like 2008. And I do speak about, like, my close circle of friends, they do know it. And funny enough, it doesn't make me angry, because I love the sea. So I could understand that it was just that one person. But I'm very big on emphasizing on the fact that we experience people differently. A hero to you might just be the worst thing to happen to me. So I've been that type of support to the kids in the industry that are coming through. And I think for me, the biggest issue in the industry also is that we don't call a spade a spade. Liwe and I were talking about it, I'm sorry, I'm taking something off your scripts. But we were talking about it earlier, and GBV sounds like a drink, like a nice colorful drink you can order. It doesn't give that air of stern, like shock, and like, oh, if someone says, okay, you're a perpetrator of GBV, you shot, it makes it seem like something summary. So for me, so I call it what it is, sexual harassment, call it sexual offense, it's actually a crime. Call it what it is, don't call it something it's not. If it's a misconduct, it's not a misconduct, it's a sexual misconduct. Don't sugarcoat stuff, almost said the word, don't sugarcoat stuff to suit or because you feel people won't be able to absorb you. Rather say it as it is and be a safe space for people, because if a person comes to you and they want to report something to you, don't go out and inform the entire universe now that, oh, did you know that one? Make yourself a safe space for people, so that when they are ready and they say, I told Tamir, and then Tamir can come and say, yeah, no, 2002, I heard this and this and this. As opposed to that, because there's also this belief that crimes have a timeline. No, they don't. Rape is one of the crimes that it can happen now, but it kills you from the inside. And you can actually just be a walking, talking person, but in actual fact, you are so violently violated and so traumatized, and you walk around carrying that trauma, and it makes the decisions for you on how to respond to other people. So thankfully enough, you get over it. Some people can, some people can't. but it's not as easy. So you have stories like when Akona actually died. Akona Gaveza died and was one of the ships on the company. And they came through, like the one captain came through, and that was one of a few captains that wasn't very open. And he's like, let's talk. This girl died, and what do you think? Are you safe? So I'm like, just because now you wanna hear you wanna use my story as though to cover up for what had happened to Akona. I'm like, no, I feel safe. I'm very open in my space, and I tell everyone how I feel, and I'm very extroverted, and I have a direct line to the management of the show. They knew me, like even after I left, we were kind of buddies, because they looked after me, because I was one of a few, like Internet was. So we had a direct relationship, so I had the opportunity to report, but no one had that. So if something happened in court, I would ask people, tell me, I'll send it through there, even if it's in an informal way. So there's a lot in the industry that needs work. There's a lot of stories untold, and there's a lot of people that are suffering by themselves, thinking they're the only people that happened. And there's a lot of people that are the minority. Like there's a lot of people that want to share their stories but scared of being victimized, because you also notice that every time there's a rape case or any sexual offenses that are happening, it's always now you're going to think I'm in front page news, because it's always Akona's face we all know. We do not know the mate. We know, what do you call this child? The South African girl. We all know her face, but we don't know the boy guy, the perpetrators. So make those faces known, so that people can walk past the street and say, oh Lord, no thanks. As opposed to just always being the victim is the one who's everywhere, who's highlighted. And that's why certain people don't report things, because it's like, if I report this and it goes big, I'm going to be the face of rape. I'm going to be the face that got a person expelled at work for something, and I'm going to be judged. And even worse, if you've got a history where you're a person who's fully empowered to an extent where you're actually good in your sex, you're happy in your sexuality, and you're willing to just explore whatever else. Now people are going to come through saying, this one had a threesome, and all of a sudden your situation kind of is dumbed down, because now, oh no, she's capable of that, then clearly it was a rape. So let's just dispel those narratives and just take things as they are. Talk to people. Don't come and subject people from your own beliefs. Don't project. Just listen to what the person is actually telling you. And if you can be of any help, help. If you can't, there's nothing wrong with that. We all are busy, and we've got we're a busy schedule. So yeah, sorry, Lee. Thank you.